As I settled into my sleeping bag in the dimly lit tent, the muffled sounds of my friends snickering and whispering surrounded me. It was a typical sleepover, but this time, we had decided to set up camp in my backyard, just a stone's throw away from our neighbor's old, decrepit house. The wind rustled the leaves in the trees above, creating a disconcerting symphony that seemed to whisper secrets into the night. We had all heard the rumors about Mr. Jennings, the man who lived next door. He was a recluse, rarely seen, and there were stories about strange happenings at his house. As we chatted and giggled, I couldn't help but feel a sense of unease settle over me. It was as if the darkness had eyes, watching our every move. Around midnight, our laughter subsided and we lay in silence, trying to fall asleep. That's when I heard it, the faintest eerie melody, like an old music box playing a melancholic tune. I sat up, my heart pounding. The sound seemed to be coming from Mr. Jennings' house. "Did you guys hear that?" I whispered to my friends. They nodded, their eyes wide with fear. We strained our ears, trying to make sense of the unsettling melody. It grew louder, more distinct, as if someone was playing it deliberately. My mind raced with thoughts of what could be happening next door. We debated whether to investigate or not, but our curiosity got the better of us. Quietly, we unzipped the tent and crept toward the edge of my yard, where we had a clear view of Mr. Jennings' house. The melody continued, drawing us closer. In the moonlight, we saw a dim light flickering through the curtains of one of the windows. It was a soft, amber glow that pulsed with the music. Goosebumps covered my arms as we watched, transfixed by the uncanny scene unfolding before us. Just as we were about to make our way over to the house, the music abruptly stopped and the light extinguished. We exchanged nervous glances, our hearts pounding in our chests. A shiver ran down my spine as we retreated back to the safety of our tent. As we huddled together, the night grew colder, and we struggled to fall asleep. Hours passed, and eventually, the exhaustion overtook our fear, and we drifted off. The next morning, we awoke to the sound of sirens and flashing lights. We rushed outside to see Mr. Jennings' house engulfed in flames. Firefighters worked tirelessly to control the blaze, but it was too late. The old house crumbled into ruins, consumed by the fire. In the days that followed, investigators determined that faulty wiring had caused the fire. But as I looked at the charred remains of the once mysterious house, I couldn't shake the feeling that the haunting melody and the peculiar light had been a warning we had narrowly escaped thanks to our curiosity. It was a sleepover we would never forget, a night when the darkness held secrets we were lucky to leave behind. It was a typical Friday night, and my friends and I had decided to have a sleepover at my house. We were all excited, looking forward to a night of movies, snacks, and endless chatter. Little did we know that the events of that night would leave us terrified and questioning our friendship. As the night wore on, we huddled in my dimly lit living room, blankets draped over us as we watched a horror movie. Our giggles and laughter filled the room, but as the movie progressed, our mirth turned to unease. Shadows danced across the walls and every creak of the old house seemed ominous. When the movie ended, we decided to tell spooky stories to add to the atmosphere. Sarah went first, sharing a tale about a mysterious disappearance in our town that had never been solved. Then it was Mark's turn, and he told us about an unsolved murder in his neighborhood. The stories got darker and more unsettling with each telling. By the time it was my turn, the mood had shifted from playful to downright eerie. I hesitated for a moment, but the pressure from my friends made me share my own unsettling experience. I recounted a time when I had heard whispers in my house at night, whispers that seemed to be coming from nowhere and everywhere at once. My friends listened in rapt attention, and I could see the fear in their eyes. As the night wore on, we heard strange noises coming from various parts of the house. We dismissed them as products of our overactive imaginations, but our nerves were frayed. Then one by one, my friends began to receive text messages on their phones. The messages were cryptic and unsettling, filled with details about our personal lives that only we could know. Panic set in as we realized that someone was watching us. Terrified, we decided to call the police, but when we picked up the landline phone, there was no dial tone. We were cut off from the outside world. As we huddled together in the living room, the messages kept coming, each one revealing more about our deepest secrets and fears. Just when we thought we couldn't take it any longer, the front door burst open and a shadowy figure entered. We screamed in terror, ready to defend ourselves, but as the figure stepped into the light, we realized it was my older brother playing a prank. He had hacked into our phones and orchestrated the entire night of terror. Relief washed over us, and we laughed nervously, grateful that it was just a prank. But as we settled back down, I couldn't help but wonder if the real horror was the darkness that could lurk within the people we thought we knew best. It was a sleepover we would never forget, one that left us questioning just how well we truly knew each other. I remember that summer night like it was yesterday, the night of the sleepover in our backyard tent with my 3 best friends, Susan, Joe, and Jennifer. We had just finished roasting marshmallows over the campfire, and the glow of the embers had begun to fade. The crickets chirped loudly in the warm night air, and the moonlight bathed our little campsite in an eerie, silvery glow. As we settled into our sleeping bags and zipped up the tent, laughter filled the air, and it felt like nothing could go wrong on this perfect night. Little did we know that our night of fun would soon take a terrifying turn. Just as we were starting to drift off to sleep, we heard a noise coming from the neighbor's house. It sounded like a muffled cry or a desperate plea for help. We all sat up, our hearts pounding in our chests. We exchanged worried glances, wondering if we should call the police or check on the neighbor ourselves. Jennifer, always the brave one, unzipped the tent and peeked outside. We strained our ears, trying to make out what was happening. Then we heard it again, a faint cry for help, followed by what sounded like shuffling footsteps. With adrenaline pumping through our veins, we decided to investigate. We quietly crawled out of the tent and crept toward the neighbor's house, our imaginations running wild with thoughts of burglars or someone in distress. As we approached, we noticed a dim light in one of the windows, flickering like a dying candle. We pressed our ears against the wall, listening intently. The cries for help grew louder, and the shuffling footsteps became more pronounced. It was unmistakable. Someone was in trouble. Joe suggested we call 911 immediately, but before we could, a blood-curdling scream pierced the night. We were paralyzed with fear, unable to move as we listened to the horrific sounds emanating from the house next door. It was a nightmare come to life. The seconds felt like hours until we heard the sound of sirens approaching. The police arrived, and we watched as they stormed the neighbor's house. When they emerged, they had a grim look on their faces. They explained that our neighbor had been injured and had been calling for help after a fall. It was a relief to know that they were now getting the medical attention they needed. As we returned to our tent, shaken by the experience, we couldn't help but feel grateful that we had been there to hear their cries for help. It was a night we would never forget, a reminder that sometimes real-life horrors can be just as terrifying as any ghost story.